Okay, so speaking of fun and amazing, we have past President Carl Egge to introduce our speaker. So fair warning, if you ever read his resume, it will make you ask yourself, what have I been doing with my life? Well, except for you, Gary, because you're curing cancer, So most of us know Carl as senior counsel at Perkins Coie. His practice is focused on corporate governance, investments, finance, and corporate law. But did you know that this New York native graduated with honors in chemical engineering from Princeton? Carl served as an officer in the U.S. Marine Corps, including a 13-month tour of duty with a combat unit in Vietnam. He received his law degree with distinction from Cornell Law School, where Carl was, of course, managing editor of the Law Review. He earned his master's in business administration from Syracuse University, attending classes during the evening while in military service. So Carl was vice chair and senior advisor of Russell Investments and chair of the Russell Trust Company. And fun fact, Carl was the U.S. State Department appointee as alternate U.S. member of the APAC Business Advisory Council. And in this role, in 2006, Carl was sent to Hanoi to meet with global leaders, including President George W. Bush, Vladimir Putin, and Hu Jintao. And also in 2008, he participated as a delegate to the World Economic Forum in Davos. So please help me welcome Carl Egge to the stage.
I was not impressed by Vladimir Putin, by the way. Much more important to meet Nelson Mandela, which many of us here did. We're really delighted today to welcome Dr. Gary Gilliland. On January 2nd, 2015, Dr. Gilliland arrived in Seattle to take the helm at the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center. 3 months later, he spoke to Seattle Rotary, outlining his vision for developing breakthrough technologies for cures for cancer, known as the Emperor of all maladies. Today, Dr. Gilliland returns to Seattle Rotary to bring us up to date on developments at the Hutch and in cancer research generally, including engaging the resources of Seattle's business community to provide key technological resources to the campaign to end the scourge of cancer. Dr. Gilliland is an accomplished researcher, clinician, and business executive, with a passionate advocate for developing cutting-edge breakthrough technologies for medical research. After receiving his PhD in microbiology from UCLA and his MD from UC San Francisco, Dr. Gilliland embarked on a career in cancer research and therapeutics. After more than 20 years as a professor at Harvard Medical School and director of the leukemia program at Boston's Dana-Farber Center, he entered the business world as senior vice president and president of global oncology at Merck, where he led the Merck team in developing one of the first immunotherapy cancer drugs known as Keytruda, bringing it from the laboratory through human trials and to FDA approval in record time. I have page 2 here somewhere. Dr. Gilliland returned to the academic world as Vice Dean and Vice President of Precision Medicine at the University of Pennsylvania Medical School. It was when he was at Penn that the Hutch board reached out and successfully convinced him to return west to lead the Hutch's efforts to develop cures for cancer. Dr. Gilliland has received many, many honors and awards for his work and is a member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences and the National Academy of Medicine. Please join me in a hearty Seattle Rotary welcome to Dr. Gary Gilliland, President and Director of the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center.
Well, thank you, Carl. Thank you, Cindy, President Cindy. I'm really delighted to be here. And I will say, and follow on to what Carl mentioned, is that Carl's one of the most important reasons that I'm here. He flew out, met with me and my wife in Philadelphia, and persuaded me with Paula Reynolds that this was the place for me to come to. So thank you for that, Carl. It's been a fantastic journey. I really love the thing where President Cindy walks up on the stage and you all stand up. It's pretty cool. I see that you're all seated, but Nonetheless, I am I am gratified that I got quite a bit more applause than John did, so I think I'm doing pretty well so far. I was here a couple of months after I started at the Hutch in 2015, and we were outlining our business plan, our comprehensive strategic plan. We were thinking about how we could have the most impact on cancer. And the stake in the ground that we placed in that time frame was that we should have curative approaches to all cancers by 2025. And I stand by that. We're on track to do that at the rate that we've moved in the last several years, and I'll come back to some of the strategies that we're using around that. But if you just look at the number of drugs that are being approved for oncology by the FDA, if you look at the fact that we're developing drugs that have curative potential rather than incremental value in prolonging life, that goal is within sight. And I would argue that if we don't realize that vision, there will be people who die as a consequence of our failure to execute. We can do this. We know where we need to go. And we all need to work together to do that, which is why it's so wonderful to be here at the Rotary and to meet with those of you who can help us achieve our mutual goal. Let's see, I've got my... Okay, that's my car fob, so I can open my door from here. Car. Here we go. Oops. Do I need to? Okay. So this is a picture of our campus. For those of you who haven't been there, you're welcome to come and visit. We'd love to have you there. We have a tour that we can take you around on. This is on the South Lake Union. We're on about 14 acres. You can see the vessel there that's out in front of the Arnold building. It's a very cool place. We couldn't possibly afford it in today's market. If you look around where the cranes are there, there's a lot of technology that swooped in. There's a big Google building going up. Facebook's there, Amazon is there, Microsoft is there. So we're really fortunate to be there. And as I'll come to in a moment, that gives us a tremendous opportunity at a time when technology and data science are becoming so important in the way that we treat and individualize cancer therapy that it's just great to be sitting right across the street from some of the titans in technology. We have an interesting history. We're the only comprehensive cancer center amongst the 47 in the United States that's named after a professional baseball player, and that's Fred Hutchinson. We were, as an organization, started by his loving brother, Dr. Bill, who was a physician, and saw 43 years ago the opportunity to try to bring together clinical research and bench research together in one place, which was a fairly novel concept at the time. And so he founded the Hutch in honor of his brother Fred, who he was a professional baseball player and a professional major league coach, developed lung cancer at the young age of 44 and died from it, as most people did in those times, at the age of 45. It's highly likely that he would have had a different course if that had happened today because of the progress that we've made, that we do have some curative approaches to this horrible cancer, metastatic non-small cell lung cancer, that he could have benefited from. And I know somewhere that Dr. Bill appreciates the fact that we've made the kind of progress that we have that could help people not as fortunate as he is. We are the only comprehensive cancer center for the 5-state WWAMI region that includes Washington, Wyoming, Alaska, Montana, and Idaho. As we point out, that's 27% of the land mass of the United States. It's not necessarily that dense from a population perspective, but it's our responsibility to make sure that we're out there guaranteeing access to care for all of those members of those states and even those in rural communities. And I'll tell you something that's really exciting. We've got treatments that do have curative potential, and I've been doing this for 30 years. I've never been more optimistic than I am now. So when I was here in 2015 and talked about the potential, I'm very happy to tell you that we've begun to realize that potential, and that I stand by the statement that I made that if we don't have curative approaches to most, if not every cancer by 2025, then we've failed people with cancer. That's our responsibility. I got a ton of pushback when I said that from all kinds of sectors, but comments that I think are reasonable to consider, like, are you overpromising? Or is this hyperbole? And to the people, especially in the scientific community, who took umbrage, My response is, I don't want to sit here and argue with you about this. I don't want to hear why you can't do it. What I want us to do is sit down and do every damn thing that we can to move the needle in the right direction, because we know that we have curative approaches to cancer, and we need to implement those. And the reason I'm so confident about this is that we've made tremendous advances in therapeutics in cancer across a very broad spectrum of mechanisms. I'm driving you nuts. But we are pursuing this with relentless zeal, this opportunity to develop cures. This is one of my favorite photographs. It shows, is meant to epitomize the fact that we are going for the win. We're going all out on this. But this is actually one of Ichiro's last games that he was playing at Safeco Field. I love this photograph. John Stanton, who's been a great supporter with his wife, Terry Gillespie, who's on our board, said that he actually arranged this. But this is Ichiro pulling that home run away from some hapless hitter right in front of the Fred Hutch sign, so it doesn't get much better than that. But we are relentlessly pursuing cures, and they're based on immunotherapy. And I'll talk a little bit more about this, but it's this idea that you can harness the power of the immune system. In fact, you don't need to do anything more than harness the power of your own immune system, and you can cure cancer in ways that don't necessarily require chemotherapy or radiation therapy and their attendant side effects. So next what I'd like to show you is a little video, and before we launch the video, Allison, I also want to say that this is the world premiere of this video for this audience here. Our comms and marketing team put it together, so we hope you enjoy it, and of course feedback's always appreciated so that we can get into the major film festivals.
It started here. A scrappy team of scientists. An advancement that would save countless lives. Bone marrow transplantation as a cure for leukemia. Proving that the human immune system could be turned into a cancer killer. A Nobel Prize followed. And now, more than 1 million patients worldwide have received transplants. But we were just getting going. That legacy helped lead to immunotherapy, a strategy for using the immune system to fight cancer. In these halls, we're staking out new ground with T-cell therapy, a highly engineered process where we extract special immune cells, called T-cells, from a patient's bloodstream. Use lasers to single out the most powerful ones. Then genetically program them to target a particular cancer. After rigorous testing, we grow millions of copies of these cells, move them from lab to clinic in a humble cooler, and infuse them back into the patient where they go to work against cancer. This is how next-generation research joins hands with cancer care, when your doctor is also a leading researcher. When decades of work brings renewed hope to patients and scientists alike, and each day brings the possibility to save more lives. It starts here.
Thank you. It's just great, isn't it? And you can see the joy in working in a place like this, you know, the impact. We can walk. We do take a cooler right across the street to the SCCA that has the cells in it. We see the patients there. We treat them in a special clinic that I'll show you in a minute. And our investigators, like Dr. Sylvia Lee, who was pictured here, are the best and the brightest, and they are relentless. And it's such a privilege for me to go to work every day. So you saw the photograph of Dr. Thomas and his wife Dottie, who have since passed, in front of a group of transplant survivors. I'm sorry. And I want to make the point that innovation is sometimes difficult to pursue, that when he first started doing marrow transplantation, people thought he was absolutely nuts. He was a cowboy, and he was denigrated, actually, for some of the work that he was trying to do. And ultimately, he focused, as we all are today, on cures for cancer. Marrow transplantation is a curative therapy. It has its attendant toxicities and side effects, but it cures patients. And what we came to realize was that the most important aspect of cures was the donor's immune system. We didn't understand how that worked, but now, decades later, we have a very clear understanding of how that worked. It's not perfectly complete, but you may have noticed that the Nobel Prize this year for Physiology and Medicine went to my friend and colleague Jim Allison and Tezuku Hanjo for their understanding about what's called checkpoint regulation in the treatment of cancer. And this is all a direct outgrowth of the work that Don Thomas did many decades ago that we're realizing the benefit from. So we are beginning to unlock the promise of cures for all patients. The medicine that I worked on at Merck, Keytruda, as an example, was a different mechanism than the engineered T cells that were shown in this movie, but that's the drug that was used to treat President Carter when at the age of 89 he was diagnosed with metastatic melanoma to his brain, 3 Mets, large Met in his liver. He was a dead man walking. We gave him an honorary award at the Hutch Award, which we have down on Safeco Field to honor Major League Baseball. And his grandson Jason accepted the award on his behalf and read a letter, which was very nice. And then he said, when my grandfather came home after he'd seen the doctors, he called the family together for breakfast the next morning, and he said, I don't know how long I'm going to live. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to finish reading the book that I'm reading. And that's a very accurate assessment. Oncologists can be very blunt, and if that's what he heard when he walked out, that would be about right for his age and the diagnosis that he had. And he received this medicine that does nothing more than flip the switch on the immune cells, on T cells. And he's now without any evidence of disease. He's 3.5 years out, building houses for Habitat for Humanity and teaching at his Bible school at church. It's the incredible power of that approach. Because of the potential, we've opened a immunotherapy clinic that focuses very specifically on bringing immunotherapy to the patients, monitoring them carefully. Many patients respond and have cures, but not all do. We need to understand why some people don't. You know, there's going to be no person left standing with cancer if we have our way with this. And this shows the ribbon cutting at the Bezos family immunotherapy clinic. The woman cutting the ribbon, Stephanie, is a woman from Idaho who had relapsed refractory, meaning terrible, terrible lymphoma, months to live at best, and she received these CAR T cells. And you can see that she looks terrific now, several years out. And in the photograph also to her left, or to your right, is Jackie Bezos, Governor Gregoire, who was then the chair of our board, and Mike Bezos. Jeff Bezos and Mackenzie, his wife, came to attend the ribbon cutting. And we've also been able to spread our word more nationally through various mechanisms, including Vice President Biden, who's shown with Dr. Stan Riddell, who came to visit the Hutch. So this is very exciting work. The clinical trials are moving rapidly forward so that we can develop treatments not only for blood cancers, but for all solid tumors using this approach. And that is going to be a reality. It's just a matter of when do we get there. And we got to get there fast, because there are people, perhaps in this room, but somebody that you know, that may die from cancer if we don't get these treatments out soon enough. Now, one very important point that I'd like to make, and one of the really fun things for me about being here at the Rotary, is that we rely on partnerships. And I learned that absolutely from the Merck side. We, academics, pharma, other businesses, need to work together towards this common goal and to support each other in this effort. We've spun out 32 companies during our tenure, and I won't go through the list, but many of them have been very successful. We have Nikki Robinson here, who's our VP for Business Development, that drives a lot of that. She's really good. You don't want to meet her in a dark alley when you're doing negotiations. So Nikki, raise your hand. I want you to. I'll also point out that amongst these are not just pharmaceutical companies like Merck and Pfizer, but Microsoft and Amazon are listed here. And back to this point about the importance of technology, we're generating terabytes of data per patient, huge amounts of data that most academic organizations couldn't manage. But because we have interfaces with Microsoft and with Amazon, the drill sergeant here is doing this, so you won't have to listen to this for more than a couple more minutes. But we're very excited about those partnerships. Satya Nadella is on our board, as is Mike Clayville, who's an executive leading AWS cloud services. What a tremendous opportunity for us to interact with them and bring AI and machine learning and deep neural networks into our understanding of cancer biology and therapy. We have a project using AI where we're trying to obviate the need for pathologists. Couldn't a machine do it better than a person? Who knows, but we're going to ask that question. It's really enticing space to be operating in. And as I said to Satya, it's just we're so delighted here at the Hutch that Microsoft is in our backyard, and we should take advantage of that. And he paused and smiled, and he said, well, actually, I think the way you should phrase that is that you're in our backyard, so, which perhaps is more apt description. I do blunder from time to time socially, but so we're very excited about the opportunities to collaborate. I think you also understand that although we're a scientific research center and clinical research center, that we also have to run a business. We're very well managed financially. We have a comprehensive strategic plan that we put together when I got here. Learned a lot from how we all should operate in the business community. And we're very excited that we can use that platform to recruit the very best and brightest faculty from all over the country. They all want to come here. I love stealing people away from Harvard that they want to keep, and we're very successful at doing that. I wanted to mention also that because we do have so many industry relationships, that we do need to manage conflict of interest. Some of you may have read about some of the issues in the New York Times that were highlighted at our comparator or sister institution, Memorial Sloan Kettering. It's very important to manage conflict. And if you have questions about that, I can tell you about our very stringent policies that we use to ensure that it's clear as a nonprofit that any resources that we generate go back into enterprise, and that we make sure that we firewall anybody that's got financial interest in companies from patients that are being treated. So one question that I know you're all thinking is, how can we help the Hutch? And first of all, I would say if there's any ways that we can help you, let us know, and I'll come back to that. But this is a picture of one of our fundraising events called Obliteride, which is a cycling race. Teams from actually many of the companies that I showed come together to raise money to help support the Hutch and to raise public interest. One thing you can do to help us is to vote for any and everything, including our congressional leaders and other measures that help support research funding in the NIH budget. We were threatened this year, as we often are, with a reduction in the budget, and because of our Senators Cantwell and Murray and our delegation, across the red and blue, this bipartisan support, we have a $2 billion increase in the NIH budget, which is about 5.4%. So we're very grateful for support around that. We are the best funded cancer center in the country by a long shot. And that's a good thing. It means we're great, we're excellent, but it also means we're dependent on NIH funding amongst our other revenue sources. And I'm very happy to have Jennifer Griffith here, who's our Vice President for Government Relations. Raise your hand. She's a former staffer on the Hill with Senator Cantwell, and she's been very helpful in ensuring that our voices are heard in Washington, and we spend a fair amount of time out there. Also, please engage us on social media. We're on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube. I think you'll find some very interesting postings there, and we do update those on a regular basis. So I also have a LinkedIn influencer thing that I couldn't have set up, but Satya helped me with that. So if you want to take a look at what some of my perspectives are. And coming back to the point about how we can help each other, you're in a place that has one of the best comprehensive cancer centers in the world. And it's a congruence of a working relationship with the University of Washington, with Seattle Children's, with the Seattle Cancer Care Alliance, and the Hutch. If you or somebody that you care about has cancer and you want to receive the best possible care, and I'm not advertising, I'm just saying, it's a fact, we have the best outcomes in transplant in the world. We're here to help you. Call me. I'm easy to contact, Gary at fredhutch.org. And we'll make sure that you get seen by the people that can help you or your loved one. So thank you all for inviting me. Thank you for coming together to talk about cancer, and let me have a chance to give you an update. And I'm going to have fun in a couple of years if I can get Ken and President Cindy to invite me back, tell you where we are, because we're making incredible progress, and you'll enjoy hearing about that then. So thank you again very much. I'd be happy to take some questions.
very much for coming and updating us. I wanted to make a comment and ask a question. This Rotary Club has overlapped with Fred Hutch in Burkitt's lymphoma area and has participated in tours of the Cancer Institute in Uganda, in Kampala, Uganda. We've also been the host club for an Italian researcher at Fred Hutch who's studying the impact of zinc on the production of T cells in the thymus gland, and maybe you could say a little more about that.
Well, first of all, yeah, that's a fantastic example of how we can work together. I know there is a Rotary in Kampala where we built a site to try to treat Burkitt lymphoma amongst other diseases that are endemic, like Kaposi sarcoma. I think that collaboration is extremely important, and just a great example of the reach of the Rotary. I mean, all around the world. And I know this was at one time the largest Rotary in the planet, I guess, here in Seattle, and I know it's now amongst the largest, but I think everyone here would agree that if it's not the largest, that it's at least the best. So we do appreciate your support. But Burkitt lymphoma is curable in 95% of kids here in the United States, and it's cured in about 5% of kids in sub-Saharan Africa. So we have to fix that. We can't fix everything in the world, but there are places where we think we can have a major impact, and we are in that space. And to do research in the context of those types of lymphomas, understanding things like zinc metabolism and how it contributes to T cell activation. So we're excited about that collaboration. We really appreciate the support of the Rotary in helping us there, because we have a constant burn rate there. We're never going to, that's not a ROI type of a operation. It's something where we're doing it because it's the right thing to do. So thank you for the question.
Hi, thank you for being here today. I work in the world of blood cancers and was just on a call this morning where we were talking about vaccines and just-in-time vaccines for cancers, particularly those that you can't screen for or prevent. Could you speak to work that the Hutch is doing in that area?
That's a great point about not only treatment but prevention. And first of all, I'll say that the opportunity around preventive vaccines is stunning worldwide. That the Hutch was, Denise Galloway at the Hutch was the first to understand the relationship between human papillomavirus as a one-to-one pathogen that causes cervical cancer. There are vaccines. All we have to do is get them out there. In the United States, there are sociopolitical reasons why we're not reaching more than 30% of girls, for example, in the state of Texas. In Kampala and other places in sub-Saharan Africa, the bigger issue is the need for multiple dosing and the cold chain. You have to keep the thing cold in an environment that's often not air-conditioned or refrigerated. To the point about therapeutic vaccines, it's a really interesting, tantalizing opportunity. Is can you give somebody a vaccine after they've developed cancer? Sometimes their immune system's compromised, so you worry about how well the vaccine can activate the immune system. And so far we've been able to measure biological responses that haven't yet been clinically meaningful. But when you start thinking about combining these new immune checkpoint regulators, like Keytruda, with vaccines, there's probably a real opportunity to goad the immune system into recognizing through the vaccine foreign antigens on tumors that will augment the response. So this is a brand new area of inquiry. Vaccines are inherently complicated in producing them. They're not small molecules. So we're trying to help support those efforts, and we do have an ongoing effort at the Hutch. But it's a great question and a great opportunity. And those are some of the things that I think are going to lead us into curative approaches by bringing together these different immunotherapeutic windows and angles.
Doctor, we have another question from Faith Ireland.
Hi, Doctor. Member of the Cancer Club, like many people in this room, and getting the Pembro treatment now, and just so grateful to Cancer Cure Alliance for everything I'm receiving. It's a wonderful group right next door to you. And my question is, how are we doing with the funding that we have for certification from the federal government? Is enough being allowed to get these treatments into process in a timely fashion?
That's a great question, and thank you for referring to it as pembrolizumab, because that's the generic name for Keytruda, and that's the name that I should use. So just thank you for helping me point that out. Well, actually, the FDA has done a terrific job of bringing forward drugs like Pembro that have major effect. I mean, we don't even have to do randomized trials to prove that it's better than some other standard of care. It's so good in melanoma, for example, that they just approved it based on a phase 1 study that was non-randomized. I think the FDA has done a great job. I think the bigger issue is that That medicine costs $160,000 per year per patient, which is on the higher end of cancer drugs. Most cancer drugs, including antibodies, are in the 100 to 120 range. The CAR T therapies, and remember this is a one-time dose, one time. And then it's a living, breathing organism. It's your own T cells. They just go back and set up shop. And you cure people. So the cost effectiveness and the value proposition is clear. The benefit to the patient is clear. Those are rolling out now, the ones that have been FDA approved by the companies that make them, at a cost of about $450,000 to $600,000 for one dose. So that raises eyebrows of all kinds at CMS, Medicaid, Medicare. And I think that's a big issue for access to care, because if we can't figure out how to deliver those medicines in a way that third-party payers are willing to support it, we're not going to get it out. There will be competition in the marketplace that's going to drive down cost and price point. I'm confident that will happen, but these are very expensive medicines. And if I was going to point to one thing, it's the problem for us now in cancer, as we have curative therapies. It's not that we don't have the treatments or that the FDA doesn't move to approve them more rapidly. It's that we have to figure out a way for our healthcare system to cover it, because currently the rising costs of oncology care are not, they're not sustainable.
And
Last
one final
question,
question
Ken.
over here.
Yes.
You mentioned that you were the cancer center for 5 states, and I was just going to say I know 3 or 4 people who have been treated here from California and other states that you didn't mention. Can you just say what the relationship you have with other cancer centers and where you get your patients from?
Sure, and when I say we're the only comprehensive National Cancer Institute designated comprehensive cancer center for those 5 states. There are 48 other comprehensive cancer centers. There's lots of cancer centers that are very high quality that are spread throughout those states that we collaborate with, we interact with to try to ensure that there's access to care. And we do have, this is the nature of the Hutch since we invented, not me, but others, invented bone marrow transplantation, is people come from all over the world to get treated here. These CAR T therapies, that process that you saw on the video around genetically reprogramming T cells, you can't imagine how complex and challenging that is, and it's a very expensive infrastructure for us to do what's called cell GMP manufacturing. So people will come from all over the country to the centers that are capable of doing this right now. We and Penn are leading edge, but if we do what we did with transplant, which is our aspiration, this is no good if it only works, or you can only do it at a couple of high-end centers. It has to work everywhere, and that's what we're heading for, and that's why the commercialization and the partnership is so important, because we're an academic organization. We're not a manufacturing and distribution facility. So I think that was the last question before Ken moves me on. So thank you.